FBI Director Kash Patel has been spreading falsehoods following Alex Pretty's killing at the hands of ICE agents in Minneapolis. Patel falsely suggested that carrying firearms at protests is illegal.
As Christie said, you cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest that you want. It's that simple. You don't have that right to break the law and incite violence.
Now, mind you, Patel made this statement after Brian O'Hara, the Minneapolis police chief, had already publicly clarified that Pretty was legally armed at the scene of his killing.
The Trump administration is now addressing the recent fatal shooting of an American citizen in Minneapolis by a federal agent, which marks the second such incident this month. Kash Patel, who is the FBI director now, made an appearance on Fox News Sunday, sharing his thoughts on firearms at protests. He clearly stated that Americans should not bring loaded guns to protests. He emphasized that showing up with a loaded firearm, particularly with 2 full magazines, is anything but peaceful. He pointed out that when you do that, you're not allowed to engage with law enforcement, and the FBI will be leading the charge to hold people accountable for that kind of behavior. He also firmly reiterated that it's not acceptable to risk inciting violence or breaking the law at a protest.
You do not get to attack law enforcement officials in this country without any repercussions. You do not get to do that in Minnesota, LA, or anywhere else. And as for this latest shooting, yes, DHS and HSI are the lead, and the FBI is processing the physical evidence. So we're in possession of the firearm, which is going to go to our laboratory.
In a notable part of his comments, he confirmed that the Department of Homeland Security is leading the investigation into this shooting with help from the FBI. The FBI has possession of the firearm involved and is conducting tests, but the primary investigative focus remains with DHS. Now, it's interesting to note how Second Amendment advocates are reacting to these statements from the FBI and DHS. Before stepping into this role, Kash Patel often appeared on right-leaning podcasts and shows, repeatedly claiming that the Epstein files and the infamous Black Book were under the direct control of the FBI director.
Who is currently holding, this is way off the topic, but who has Jeffrey Epstein's
Black Book?
Black Book.
FBI.
But who? That is, I mean, there's...
Oh, that's under direct control of the director of the FBI.
He made bold commitments to release those files and ensure that the truth surfaced. In this context, it's worth mentioning that many people have grown skeptical of mainstream media.
On the record, the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus said in a statement, quote, they are deeply concerned about the shooting that occurred yesterday and are hoping that an investigation plays out fully to see what happens. They say, quote, every peaceable Minnesotan has the right to keep and bear arms, including while attending protests, acting as observers, or exercising their First Amendment rights. These rights do not disappear when someone is lawfully armed, and they must be respected and protected at all times.
There's a lot going on in Minnesota, and you can feel the tension in the air. And the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus made a statement expressing their deep concern about it. They're hoping for a thorough investigation to get to the bottom of things. They emphasize that every peaceful individual has the right to carry firearms, even during protests or while exercising their First Amendment rights. Those rights shouldn't just go away because someone is armed. They deserve respect and protection at all times.
Gun Owners of America condemned that statement, saying that they were untoward. They said that federal agents are not highly likely to be legally justified in shooting concealed carry licensees. They also said that the Second Amendment protects Americans' rights to bear arms whilst protesting. Even the NRA, the National Rifle Association, which has always normally backed Donald Trump's administration, they made a rare statement against the administration, saying that this is dangerous and wrong.
Pam Bondi is pointing fingers at Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey for what's happening in the state.
Let me just get your initial thoughts of what's happened here in Minneapolis in the last couple of hours.
Well, why this has happened in Minneapolis is because you have a mayor, you have a governor who has declared Minneapolis a sanctuary city, saying, bring your worst of the worst to Minneapolis. You're invited here. We will protect you.
She shot off a letter stating that the lawlessness in the streets is matched by some serious financial fraud that's happening on their watch. There's a concern that this fraud might impact election security, which is making folks lose faith in the state's ability to safeguard taxpayer funds and keep the citizens safe. All this comes down to the rule of law and the accountability of those in power. Courts are starting to make it clear It's no longer acceptable to lie to Congress or misrepresent court orders just to hide evidence. Kash Patel is feeling the heat. Congress and judges are ready to hold him responsible. They're prepared to use their contempt power and even consider jail time, if that's what it takes to uphold the law. But here's the twist. Once Kash Patel became the FBI director, his story flipped. Suddenly, he's claiming that court orders are keeping him from releasing files, citing protective and sealing orders as his reasons. Yet Congress isn't letting him off the hook that easily. Representative Dan Goldman, who used to be a federal prosecutor, directly challenged Patel, asking him to specify which court orders are stopping him from sharing witness statements. It's a pretty wild situation, and you can tell that people are keeping a close eye on how this all unfolds. Kash Patel is really in a tight spot. While he's busy claiming he can't share the Epstein files, he's also been firing people left and right from the FBI. It's not just any random firings either. Many of those he's let go have ties to the Epstein investigation or are connected to the investigations into Trump, including the events of January 6th. It definitely paints a picture that he's trying to protect Trump by hiding the Epstein files and getting rid of anyone who might know their contents. It's almost like he's set on a path, and it feels pretty coordinated and deliberate. The real kicker here is that judges and lawmakers are starting to piece together what's going on. They've said that the government should be the one revealing these files, not Patel, and they're getting tired of his excuses. It's clear they see through his claims, and I can't help but think he's digging a deeper hole for himself. If he keeps lying to Congress about court orders and ignores those same orders, he's really opening himself up to serious trouble. Think contempt charges or even perjury, and it doesn't stop there. Legal experts are noting that there's a storm brewing around Patel. Judges might be ready to crack down on him if he doesn't start complying with their requests to disclose those documents. This isn't just a casual situation. The headline that Kash Patel could be facing prison isn't an exaggeration. If a judge finds that he's willfully ignored a clear order to produce documents or caught him lying about what those orders say, he's in for major consequences. The walls are closing in, and there's a lot at stake for him right now. Kash Patel is in some serious legal hot water right now, facing the possibility of being held in civil or criminal contempt. When we talk about contempt, we're looking at fines that pile up, detention, and even jail time until he gets in line. Judges are definitely losing their patience with him, and it's clear they're not buying his excuses anymore. They've started to see through his stonewalling tactics, and they've got some serious tools at their disposal to deal with this kind of behavior. These federal judges can hold someone in contempt, lock them up, and even find them in criminal contempt. There's a real chance that Kash Patel could end up facing some tough consequences. It's almost like the judges are turning against him, and it captures the essence of the situation really well. They're checking out the actual court orders and comparing them to what Patel has been saying to Congress. From what they're seeing, it looks like Patel might be either bending the truth or seriously misrepresenting what those orders say, which is a big problem for him and could lead to judicial action. On top of all that, Congress is carefully documenting everything. They've got video of Patel back when he was just a commentator and not yet the FBI director, claiming he would release the Epstein files. He's also testified that court orders are stopping him from doing so, but Congress has legal experts confirming that's not what those orders actually state. So, they're building a solid record of Patel's false claims, and if he finds himself in court, all this documentation is going to work against him. Now, let's take a moment to unpack Kash Patel's history with the Epstein files. He used to be a big-time Trump supporter, making the media rounds as a commentator before he hit the FBI director role. At that time, he was really just a conservative voice with a following. And in interviews on Blaze Media founded by Glenn Beck, he repeatedly emphasized that the FBI director had control over Jeffrey Epstein's black book. He claimed that the FBI was in possession of it and insisted that these documents needed to be released. He was adamant, saying if he ever became FBI director, he'd make sure those files got out. That was his consistent message. Kash Patel made a bold promise, one that he stood by for quite some time on national conservative media. He was all about transparency, insisting that key files in the infamous Black Book needed to be made public. He claimed that if he ever got to be the FBI director, he'd leverage that power to make sure those files were out there because, in his words, the American people deserve to know what's really going on. That was his whole angle, really, building up credibility as the guy who truly cared about accountability. Patel had his eyes set on being the one to release the Epstein files when the opportunity arose, but then things took a turn when he actually became the FBI director appointed by Trump. Suddenly, his tune changed entirely. Instead of pushing for transparency, he started talking about court orders and protective measures that were blocking the release of those files. It was as if the magic wand of legality had suddenly appeared, allowing him to hide behind the very orders he once criticized. Congress didn't let him off the hook so easily. Representative Jaime Rashin, a prominent member of the House Judiciary Committee, aired an old video of Patel, one where he was expressing that the only reason the Epstein list wasn't released by the Department of Justice and the FBI was due to the heavyweights on that list. It was almost like putting a spotlight on Patel's own words, forcing him to revisit his earlier stance when he was just a commentator. Those words were clear. The files hadn't come out because of who was involved, hinting at Trump and those entwined in wealth and influence. Then, when Congress asked Patel point blank why he wasn't releasing the files now that he was in charge, his reply was all about the court orders holding him back. He claimed he couldn't do it because of protective and sealing orders. That's when Representative Dan Goldman, a former prosecutor with plenty of experience under his belt, stared him down and insisted Patel specify which orders were in play. Goldman's demand for clarity highlighted just how twisted the whole situation had become. Kash Patel found himself in a bit of a tight spot when asked to clarify which court orders he was referencing. He just couldn't specify or even name them. Instead, he kept throwing around vague mentions of court orders and protective orders without ever presenting the actual documents or details. Honestly, that raises a huge red flag. It really makes you wonder if he's being dishonest. What's even more critical is that experts from Politico and legal circles took a good look at the actual court orders, and they found that the judges didn't say what Patel claimed they did. In fact, the courts have encouraged both the FBI and the Department of Justice to release their files with no evidence of any court orders stopping them from doing so. So we've got judges urging the release of files while Patel insists that court orders are holding him back. That kind of contradiction is a problem for Patel because misrepresenting what the court said or lying to Congress about these orders could land him in serious trouble. Contesting a court's authority, perjury, possibly even obstruction of justice. When Patel was pressed about why the remaining Epstein files were still under the FBI's control, he misleadingly claimed that court orders were keeping him from releasing them. He even went so far as to say that the documents were sealed, although there's no record of any court orders saying that the DOJ couldn't release their investigatory files. We're not even in a gray area here. It's clear he made false claims about those orders. This isn't just a minor hiccup. It's lying to Congress and potentially perjury. And then in December 2025, something significant shifted the spotlight back onto Patel. The Justice Department released new materials related to Epstein, revealing internal emails that mentioned 10 co-conspirators. This put Patel's earlier testimony on shaky ground, especially since he told lawmakers that there was no credible information showing Epstein truffled young women to anyone but himself. So he testified under oath that there was no evidence of co-conspirators. Yet the DOJ dropped new information showing those 10 co-conspirators. Either Patel lied under oath or he hasn't done his homework on the files he's supposed to handle. In either case, that's a serious legal issue. It's quite the precarious position for him, bringing potential charges of perjury or obstruction of justice into play. Congress is collecting quite a bit of evidence against Kash Patel. They're tracking all the times he contradicted himself. Once he claimed he wanted to be transparent as a commentator, but now as the FBI director, he's not being so forthcoming. He seems to be misrepresenting court orders, which can get complicated for him. And there's also his questionable testimony regarding co-conspirators, where he might have stretched the truth. On top of that, While he's keeping the Epstein files under wraps, he's also been busy making some serious cuts at the FBI. Patel has taken advantage of his position to let go of experienced agents for what appears to be political motives, all while trying to defend President Trump's reputation and possibly cover up Trump's connections to Jeffrey Epstein, who is known for his heinous actions. Many of the agents he's fired were involved in key investigations, including those related to Trump, the events of January 6th, and even the Epstein inquiry itself. It really seems like a planned strategy. Hide the files, dismiss the agents who worked on those investigations, and rid himself of anyone who knows what's actually in those files. Legally, this pattern could backfire on Patel. Retaliation against federal employees, especially targeting whistleblowers or those involved in investigations about Trump, is against the law. And it looks like these agents are fighting back with lawsuits. They're claiming Patel's motives for firing them were political, so now he's in a bit of a legal mess. There's litigation around the Epstein files, challenges related to contempt, possible obstruction issues, and these employment lawsuits piling up. Now let's unpack why Kash Patel is really in hot water. Firstly, he misled Congress concerning court orders. He told them those orders stopped him from publicly sharing the Epstein files, but judges say those orders actually encourage him to disclose information. So either he lied or he completely misrepresented what the judges were saying. That could lead to some serious trouble, contempt of Congress, or even perjury. Then there's his false testimony about co-conspirators. Under oath, he claimed there was no credible evidence of any co-conspirators, but soon after the Department of Justice released documents highlighting 10 of them. So clearly he lied, and that's a federal crime that could land him in jail. Lastly, Patel has broken his own promise. Before stepping into his current role, Kash Patel, the FBI director, made a big promise on camera that he would release the Epstein files. He confidently stated he would ensure the black book got out there. But now it seems like he's backtracking, using all sorts of excuses and hiding behind dubious claims about court orders. Congress isn't letting him off the hook for going back on his word. Plus, there's a troubling trend. Patel is cleaning house at the FBI, letting go of agents who could reveal the truth. He's firing those who worked on the Epstein case, those involved in Trump investigations, and anyone who might have insight into what's really in those Epstein files. This looks a lot like retaliation, and it raises questions about possible criminal conduct, leaving Patel exposed legally. Things are heating up in the courts, too, as judges are starting to get angry. They see through Patel's excuses and are realizing he's misrepresenting their statements. These judges have power. They can hold someone in contempt, impose hefty fines, or even jail someone. Patel is testing their patience, and Congress is carefully documenting everything he does. They've got video footage of Patel making his bold promises on conservative media, along with his statements during congressional testimony where he contradicted himself. They're gathering expert legal opinions from judges proving he lied about court orders and what they contained. Congress is piecing together a comprehensive case against Patel, building a permanent record that could lead to criminal prosecution. This record isn't just a collection of notes. It highlights contradictions and lies, showing a troubling pattern of obstructing justice and hiding evidence. So when I say that the headline, Kash Patel stares down prison, really captures his current situation, it's true. He's not under arrest yet. No handcuffs and no indictment has come down. But he's facing serious legal trouble. We're talking about contempt of court, obstruction of justice, potential perjury charges, retaliation against federal employees, and abuse of power. These are no small matters. They're serious federal crimes that could lead to significant jail time. We're in felony territory here. Patel's situation is looking pretty grim lately. You know, those mandatory minimum charges really can ruin careers and freedom. It's all tied to this bigger issue about whether the rule of law even exists in America anymore. When courts can't get the FBI director to follow their orders, it makes you question the purpose of having courts in the first place. And if Congress can't hold the FBI director accountable for lying, then what good is congressional oversight? If judges can't send someone to jail for not respecting their orders, it feels like the rule of law is totally out the window. We'd be looking at a scenario where the FBI director is effectively above the law, where powerful government figures can shove evidence under the rug, get rid of anyone who might spill the beans, and lie to Congress without facing any consequences. That's not just a breakdown of the rule of law. That's slipping into autocracy and dictatorship territory. But here's the twist. Judges seem to be saying, not under my watch. They're ready to flex their muscles. They can impose fines, hold people in contempt, and put defiant individuals behind bars. They're clearly willing to use their constitutional powers against Kash Patel if it comes down to it. They're getting fed up, losing their patience, and it looks like they're gearing up to enforce some significant consequences. So, Patel is in a tight spot. His options are running out. He has two choices. Either he releases the full Epstein files immediately without holding back and only redacting what's absolutely necessary to protect the victims' identities, or he could face serious contempt charges from federal judges. The stakes are high. Patel is potentially looking at perjury charges for his misleading testimony about co-conspirators and obstruction charges for hiding evidence. On top of that, he could face retaliation charges from fired agents who are bringing their lawsuits in federal court. It's like a perfect storm of legal troubles converging all at once. Congress is working on building a case against him. Judges are losing their patience, and those disgruntled ex-agents are ready to sue. Both Democratic and Republican lawmakers are digging into Patel's actions, which shows it isn't just a one-sided issue. There are multiple angles closing in on him, and the judiciary has definitely lost their faith in Patel's explanations. They're checking the actual court orders, and it's clear that the judges have started to turn against him, marking a notable shift in this whole saga. Judges are starting to realize that Patel isn't being straight with them. They're comparing what he's telling Congress to the actual court orders, and it's clear he's been misleading them, which is a big deal. It's one thing for someone in power to misrepresent facts, but when a judge catches on, that's when things can get serious. And I mean serious. Patel is in a tight spot. The clock is ticking for him. He has a window of opportunity to play ball. In fact, he could easily release those files today or at the very latest tomorrow. All he has to do is provide Congress with what they're asking for, and he could wrap this whole mess up right now. But if he continues to play the stonewalling game, if he insists on lying about the court orders or refuses to follow through on what Congress and the judges expect, then judges won't hesitate to act. We're talking about potential fines that could start stacking up every day, as well as serious threats of jail time. It's all building to a point where judges might just decide to lock Kash Patel up until he agrees to comply with the law. This whole situation has stemmed from months of Patel trying to keep things under wraps, lying to Congress, and misrepresenting information to the courts. So, when someone in a powerful position tries to suppress the truth and eliminate anyone who might shed light on it, eventually the legal system steps in. Once judges zero in on a case like this, they get down to serious enforcement. And the reality is, someone could end up in prison for contempt and obstruction. For Patel, that moment is fast approaching, and the pressure is getting more intense by the day. The inconsistencies in his story are becoming harder to ignore. It seems like things are getting pretty serious for Kash Patel lately. Judges are really showing their frustration and making it clear they're ready to throw around some serious power to get compliance. You have to wonder what's going through Patel's mind as he faces this situation. He's got a big choice to make. Will he voluntarily release those files and dodge potential jail time and contempt charges? Or will he keep resisting and run the risk of facing consequences like prison for defying orders from federal judges? The stakes are high, and Patel is staring down the real possibility of incarceration if these judges decide to lock him up for contempt of court. They're expressing that they have the authority to do so, and they're not just saying it lightly. The threat is tangible. Jail time is not just a distant thought. It could happen if he doesn't change his approach and release the files soon. If you're keeping up with how Kash Patel has misled about court orders related to Epstein's files and how the judges are now turning against him, it's definitely worth subscribing to Pump Politics. We're breaking down everything from how the FBI director is stalling evidence while letting agents go to the legal trouble Patel could be in for perjury and obstruction. Plus, we're spotlighting just how fed up the judges are with his excuses. Don't forget to hit that bell so you won't miss out on our updates. You can also join our free newsletter to stay informed on Patel's legal battles as judges start closing in. Links are in the description.